Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to another one of my shows here on William Wallace for America. With me today is Nina May. We got about a half an hour or so before our next show, so we got plenty of time to get to know her and find out what she's up to. I think when you see and learn more about her, you're going to find some really interesting stuff that you're going to want to share and learn more about. Nina, how are you doing today?
Oh, doing great. Great. Just getting all excited about Christmas. So
I
that's
love it. I like the Christmas plaid shirt you got on.
yeah, oh you bet. This is my work shirt. I've been busy out here at the farm all day.
Oh, you have a farm in Arlington?
It's close to Arlington. It's about an hour from Arlington. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've got some friends in Virginia, so I hear that also have a farm. I have to say about that later. Well,
Okay.
well, well, Nina, you've got a lot of things going on. As I look through your profile and everything, it looks like you were there on January 6th, and so you have a story about that, from what I understand. Looks like you'd like to talk about emancipation, revolution, and you also about critical race theory and Democrat racism. And you might not look like the person that talks about some of these things, but I would love to hear your perspective on that. What's your
Oh,
January 6th story?
we are a production company. I'm a writer, producer, director, and we took our production team down there, our crew, because we wanted to get some good footage, good B-roll, and we're very close to DC, so we go to a lot of the rallies. I've got tons of footage over the years of the rallies that have been there, the speeches that have been given. It's all pretty historic because you want to get your own footage. Otherwise, you've got to pay for and license someone else's footage, and that's just very complicated and very expensive. So we just always bring the camera crew down when something like this is happening, and we got about 4 hours of footage, and we're there, and what we saw is not at all what Liz Cheney's wanting you to think that you saw. And I would say also we had about 20 fellow producers, actors, writers, directors who had come in from Hollywood to do exactly the same thing, to go around DC and get some good footage and stuff. So we all
Right.
compared notes later, and what we saw is not what they're saying we saw.
What
So,
did what
but
what did you see? What was the real sentiment of what you saw? Now, and look, there's I have a lot of friends that, some are like, oh, they're all support of the January Sixers. Some are not in support of the January Sixers. Some say they saw something different. They blame the January Sixers, but I look for different perspectives, not so much to argue the point, but I believe that when you get different perspectives, if people stay open minded and just listen to other stories, you might find that there's actually something else to know about what happened than what you're hearing in either the media or what your conclusion might be.
yeah, no, that's exactly right. And what shocked us, I guess, was when we later around 2:30, 3 o'clock, we started hearing what was on TV. And I said, no, that's not what we saw. I got to go back over there. And what we saw was totally different than what they were showing was happening on TV. It was like two different movies being shot at the same time. And that's what my takeaway was. I said, Trump started his speech an hour later than they thought. So they had this quote insurrection happening while he was still speaking. He was still speaking for another 20 minutes or 25 minutes after they said that breach of the Capitol happened. Well, we were standing there. The president was still speaking. We were standing there, totally unprovoked. This huge group of SWAT, I mean, fully geared SWAT guys were up on the balconies, and they started shooting flashbangs into a very, very peaceful crowd of people. And everyone was screaming for them to stop because people were getting hurt. In fact, one of the people that died as a result of getting hit in the chest with one of these flashbangs. And people were shocked, going, "Why are they doing this?" Everybody was singing "God Bless America." They were, chanting USA. And the reason they were that close to the Capitol is that the president had said something in his speech. We had all walked from the White House to the Capitol, which takes
Right.
about 50 minutes. And he had said something in his speech about, I understand that y'all are going to be going to the Capitol, and be patient. I mean, be peaceful and patriotic. And I think I'm supposed to be there too. I'm not really sure. That's what we all heard. We were on the outer fringe area of where the group was. And we said, "Oh, well, shoot, we can barely hear what he's saying here. We're just way far away from where the White House is and the speakers and everything." So a whole group of us left the White House and started walking back up to the Capitol, specifically for the purpose of getting a really good, front row seat of, whatever
Right.
this speech was going to be. And so that's why it was impossible for him to have incited anyone. I mean, no one was running up Pennsylvania Avenue to get to the Capitol. Everyone was
Right,
just,
exactly.
walking along. So when did he
So you're
incite
saying it
anyone?
already started by the time he talked about going to the
Yeah,
Capitol, it had already started.
they were starting to shoot flashbangs at people while he was still giving his speech. And he didn't say anything in there. In fact, if you can get the written copy, it's online anywhere you want to see it. There was nothing in there about, storm the Capitol and do this and do that. In fact, they turned down his offer to have, troops on hand in case something happened. Another
Right,
two or three things. Another point that people don't know about is that a lot of the people that were there that January 6th had come in the day or two before because there was a prayer walk around the Capitol the day before on January the 6th. So all those people that were there, I'd say 99% of them were peaceful, God-fearing, country-loving Americans, and they were
right,
there to pray for the
exactly.
country. And that's who we saw. We didn't see any violence. We didn't see any people. We did see a few people kind of run through the crowd telling everyone, "You got to get there quick. You got to storm the Capitol. You got to do this." And we all looked at each other and laughed and go, "Is he kidding?" This happened two or three times with
Right,
people.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
they said, "Storm the Capitol? What planet are they from?" So you could tell that there was something happening in the crowd, but it wasn't the crowd. It was sort of agitators that were trying to stir things up, but nobody was biting. And it was more like a carnival that day, is the best way I can describe it. People had their little, booths out. They were selling things. There was a guy selling Irish stuff, kiss me, I'm Irish. And it was a party atmosphere. And it was no anger. There was no hate. There certainly was not a feeling of we're going to storm the Capitol and do whatever. What would you do if you stormed the Capitol anyway?
Right, yeah,
So
exactly.
and we're
Nobody's thinking
saying
about that.
we said from the beginning, give us that 14,000 hours of security tape that they have. They will not release it because they know it will show that what they have pieced together and they have created out of whole cloth did not exist. It did not happen that way. And the footage, the security footage will tell it instantly. And think
So
about it.
you're
They gave,
saying
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're saying that the video footage that you and other people have is not is going to show that the insurrection or the agitators or the flashbangs that were being fired, all of that was being done before the president ended his speech. So you're
Before
adding
the end of the speech.
another, yeah, you're adding a different dimension here to this,
Yeah.
that you're showing a different timeline than I've ever heard, and you say you've got proof on
Oh, yeah,
video.
exactly, that day, because we do our own editing, we do everything ourselves, it's simple to pull something together. I went back and I got in the editing suite and I pulled together a 15-minute sort of overview of what happened that day because I didn't want to forget it. So I wrote my narrative out and then I added the footage that I had taken that day to just that 15 minutes. Again, I've got like 4 hours worth of it. And I immediately sent that out to my key list, thousands and thousands of people, so that they would have it. It's password protected. We've given it to a ton of people. A lot of congressmen have seen it. People in law enforcement have seen it. So it's nothing we're hiding at all. We want the world to see it, but
Right.
we're very concerned about saying where it is because obviously these platforms would take you down. They
Yeah,
don't want
right,
you to be
exactly.
screaming the truth. So you just got to be careful. We never, obviously, never went into the Capitol. There's no need to. I mean, my gosh, I've been to the Capitol a million times. I know it's in there. But what was fascinating was what was going on the outside. Here was what was interesting. At about, I want to say 3 o'clock or 3:30, when all this hell was supposed to be breaking loose, and they pulled the people out and they did this. Well, Ashley Babbitt had already been shot, so there were no. We were in a townhouse right behind the Capitol, so I could see through binoculars what was happening at behind the Capitol on the steps, and I was seeing with the TV that was right next to me what they were claiming was happening. And I said, I got to go back. There's something wrong with this picture. So we walked back over. We'd been in the front of the Capitol the whole time. We walked now to behind the Capitol because I said, well, back's not going to be any different than the front. Well, it was big. It was hugely different. We saw all these Capitol Hill police just kind of standing around on the steps of the Senate side. We saw people with their, calmly walking around with their Trump flags, their American flags, and people singing "God Bless America." And those pictures that you see of everybody kind of hanging out on the balcony, you see that in every single rally that happens. That happens all the time. In fact, I was with a man. He was sent as my guard, basically,
Yeah.
and he's a black man. He's in his late 60s, and he says, I said, does this look like anything you've ever seen? He says, Nine, I was born and raised here in DC. I've seen these things come and go, and there's nothing different about this rally than there've been all the other rallies I've seen through my entire life.
So
Nothing different about it.
kind of
And it
kind
was
of I'm
actually,
hearing.
again, it was a kind of a festive feel back there. I can't stress that enough. There was no anger. There was no, tear the place down, none of that type of stuff. And the Capitol Hill police were just walking around like it was just another day. Here's another
Uh-huh.
thing that got me. There were no sounds of sirens anywhere. There were no signs of ambulances. There were no EMP trucks or vans or anything like this. There was no move to try and get everyone out of the place because all this hell was breaking loose inside. It was another day at the Capitol. I'm telling you, it is just crazy to
So
think about
so
it. And again, if you
almost as
release the tape and we'll have the truth.
So almost as if, like you were say a minute ago, that the he his speech was not over while the insurrection was going on. So you're saying that's some proof that they're misreporting the time. We know that
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi rejected the president's request to have additional guards there. It's
Hmm.
sounding to me like, look, I'm from Louisiana, and down where there's hurricanes, but you've seen
Hmm.
the news reports before, and you see what happens before, where you'll see a weather reporter out in they'll find the deepest canal they can to go stand in it, and they'll say, "Oh, this is flooding going on," but then or they'll lean in like the wind's blowing, but then you look back and the trees aren't even moving,
Right,
So
right.
is that kind of what I'm hearing now that
Oh, oh,
that
totally.
their
Absolutely.
camera angles were finding the one person that might have been running, whereas your camera
Yes.
angle showed 99% of the people like not even moving.
Exactly. No, that's exactly right. In fact, you can create a scrum out of anything. And the point of a scrum is to make it look like there's a lot of action. There's, everything's in there. You get a camera in there and
Right,
you can
right.
have 3 people that make it look like 50 people. It's so easy to do. And again, as a producer and a director and, an editor, I know how to put this stuff together to make it look even more, you know, uh, more dangerous than it actually really
Oh,
was.
absolutely.
Very, very, very simple to do. Here's a couple of things, couple of takeaways. One point is why did they select a producer from Hollywood, give him all that footage? No one else, not one other soul in the world has seen all that footage but this person. And with 14,000 hours of footage to work from, he comes up with maybe 2 minutes of footage that proves their point. And if anything, it absolutely lays bare the point that they are lying. Here's a big one. When you can see, we've all seen the one where they're pushing back against the bike racks, right? You got the
Oh,
two
yeah,
bike
exactly.
racks there. They're pushing back against them. They're trying to push them down, and the police are pushing back on them. Blah blah blah. Well, first of all, that walkway is probably 5 bike racks wide. It's two
Oh,
bike racks
wow.
there, but
Yeah, yeah.
well, shoot, I just walk around it. I mean, what are you doing here? But
Yeah, exactly.
you look behind them, it's green grass everywhere. That place was packed with people by that time. This was about 12, it was their timing. They said it was 12:53 when the bike racks were being
Can
breached. That was the breach
can
of the Capitol. What couldn't possibly have been? There was not a soul behind them. It was all green grass. And for them to say that they were being pushed, and this one woman, one of the police officers said, I was slipping in my own blood. It was the most horrifying day of my entire life. And going, show me the blood. If there was that blood, there were tons of press people around there. They would have taken footage of that. That would
Oh,
have
yeah,
been the
because
man of
all
the
the
year, Time Magazine Man of the Year, the blood on the steps of the Capitol. Please, seriously.
yeah.
And what did she go to jail for? Not jail, but what did she go to the hospital for? Did she go to the hospital? She never really got into that when they were interviewing her on the panel discussion. And all of them crying. Seriously. One of them it's trying to say that they were walking down the street and everybody surrounded him and was using the N word and this and that. No, that did not happen, and he knows it did not happen. And if it did happen, his body cam would show that. He's not showing his body
Mhm.
cam. All the cameras, 2 feet every 2 feet in Capitol in Washington D.C. is a camera.
Right.
They didn't show any of that. So,
Can
and now,
anybody can
pardon.
can anybody see your footage? I mean, do you have your footage publicly available?
It's available, but it's password protected. So if someone got in touch with you, I could give you that, and then you would just give them that information.
Yeah,
But
I
I'm afraid if I let the password be out, they'll take it down in an instant.
I see.
So I don't want that to happen. But enough
Okay.
people have seen it. I mean, thousands of people have seen it, one way or the other. And
You
now,
know,
you know what? Now that we're moving into a different Congress, basically, and everyone that I've talked to in Congress wants to have the other side of the story told. So that's when I'll be able to, release it and have fun, letting
well,
everyone know what the truth is.
let's move to what else you like to talk about. Emancipation, a revelation, or I'm sorry, revelation,
Emanci-
revolution. That's a
yeah,
tongue
Emancipation
twister.
Revolution. It is a tongue
What
twister.
is that? What is that?
Emancipation. Well, it's a documentary we did, and it's the history of the civil rights movement in America, the role that both parties played in it, and what happens today to conservative blacks who leave the liberal plantation and embrace the party of Lincoln. Well, it goes back to the beginning of the party of Lincoln, which was an abolitionist party. A lot of people, Republicans, don't even know that. It was founded specifically to abolish slavery. 6 of the 9 planks in their original platform dealt with emancipation, equal rights, voting rights, integration. I mean, everything you can possibly imagine. And again, it was an abolitionist party from the beginning. So fast forward from it being founded in 1854, 11 years later, a war is fought and won by the North, by the Yankees, by the Republicans, because they were all anti slavery. I mean, that was the whole point of the party. And it was the Democrats that started this war to keep
Mhm.
slavery alive. Slavery had already been outlawed. You could not import more slaves. That was it. So basically, what you got, you can keep them, but you still have to treat them well. Da, da, da. So that's why the Democrats had to dehumanize slavery and the slaves in order to maintain that system of control. So they divided the nation in a war over the issue. They wanted to keep their slaves. After the war was over, they were the ones that founded the Jim Crow laws. When Joe Biden talks about Jim Crow 2.0, well, he should know because his party was Jim
His
Crow
party
1.0.
started, and he should know because he was the one that said he didn't want his children going to school in a racial jungle,
Well,
and
and
he
not only that, get this one, because everyone says, "Oh, well, that was then. This is now. All the Republicans are racist today. Da da da. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed." Go, yeah, that's really interesting. Senator Robert Byrd, who was a Democrat member of the Senate,
that's right.
was also a Kleagle, which means he was a leader, a recruiter of the
Mhm.
KKK. Well, guess
Right.
who gave a eulogy at his
Hil
funeral?
Hillary Clinton,
Well, Hillary Clinton and also our sitting president, Joe Biden. So, Joe, so when did you start embracing the KKK and members of the KKK?
and nobody
Hillary,
likes to talk about that. We like to remind him, and I'm glad you brought that up,
yeah,
so no, and
and
100%.
Hillary called him her conscience. He was her mentor. Dodd called him the conscience of the Senate. This is a KKK person, but we're not surprised because the
Mhm.
Democrats founded the KKK in 1866 as a terrorist arm of their party. They were proud of it. In fact, if you fast forward a little bit to the time that President Wilson was president, also a Democrat, he loved the KKK. There was a
Exactly.
huge KKK march down Pennsylvania Avenue, all in their cute little pointy white hats and stuff. And the very first movie ever shown in the White House was Birth of a Nation, which glorified the KKK. So yeah, no, this is not that far removed that the Democrats were openly and proudly supporting the KKK. In the state of Virginia, we had the governor close down the schools instead of integrating them. That happened all throughout the South. All the Southern
That's
governors
right.
were all Democrat. Every one of them was a Democrat. And most of them closed their schools to keep from having to integrate the schools. So for them, and the reason I did this, I was tired of being called a racist because I'm a Republican. And I said, you know what? Let's just share the truth about what the Democrat Party is. And now they're talking about reparations. Great, let's have that discussion. Because when you have that discussion, you're going to have to talk about, bring the evidence forward. And the evidence shows
And
that they have always been a racist party. They've always been a segregationist party. They've always been a separate but equal party. They're
and
still,
you do and you do and you do movies on all these things, correct?
yeah, that's what we do.
How can people see your movies? I want to talk about that for just 1 second, and then I have another. Then you have another thought for you. But how can people see your movies? Where do they go?
For that, for reparations, who should pay, and ERR, which is Emancipation, Revelation, Revolution, go to errvideo.com.
errvideo.com. All right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And so you can see, you can download the reparations. That's only 20 minutes. I would say start with that one. And there's there's one of Joe Biden at the funeral of Robert
is
Byrd.
that
Sorry, my
is
throat.
that is that err.com website? Does that have all your information on it?
It links to Renaissance Women Productions. So
Is
if
it
you start there, then you can find
R
all of
E
the stuff through
R
there.
E N A I S S A N S E
ANCE. Yeah,
A N C
RENAISSANCE is Renaissance.
Productions.com.
Renaissance Women Productions. Uh-huh. Yes, that would be a .com too.
RENAISSANCE productions.com. All right, let's do that.
Right.
So we're going to
Right.
do this, and I got it coming up down here at the bottom where people can see that. You'll see it in just a second.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Cool.
so here we go. More about Nina May at renaissanceproductions.com so people can see that. Um,
Oh,
and
it's Renaissance Women Productions.
Renaissance Women Productions. All right,
Sorry
let's
about.
see.
Oh, we love
Let's
men though, so it's not a feminist thing at all. It's just.
No, I get it. I mean, look, I got no problem at all with women, different groups, different people, different races, genders, having groups that support the people that look like them, are like them, be like them. I've got no problem with individualism. I have no
Mhm,
problem with groups of people who come together on like-minded issues that they want to just be with themselves. What I have a problem with is when the government or the narratives tell me that I can't be with a group of people like me because of whatever reason. Especially if I get with a group of white people, they might say, "Oh, you're racist because you only want to have a group of white people." Well, no, sometimes you want to be with like-minded people that look like you, think like you. There's no problem with it. So women having a group, absolutely no problem. Other people having
mhm,
groups, no problem. Now, as long as they're not hateful or racist groups, I'm okay with it. But Nina, one of the things that I thought about, you know, it seems that now that more black people are waking up to what the Democrat Party has done, not only through the years, but how they're being used in today's time by the Republican Party, that there's new narratives being drawn up, like CRT. So here we are
right.
at a time when I think the Democrats saw this wave of black people going, wait a minute, I really have more conservative values that align me with the Republican Party instead of the Democrat Party. And the Democrats go, oh, no, 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 CRT. And they slam down this new ideology philosophy to divide more people than it does unite more people. Is that what
Mhm.
you see when you created your CRT movie?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of the most divisive forms of indoctrination that I think that we've ever seen. But it's exactly the Democrat playbook. That's exactly what they've done for generations, generations. Again, I remind people they fought a war. They killed their fellow Americans to keep this philosophy
That's
alive,
right.
to keep the idea that the races should be separate. That white talk about white supremacy. Their whole movement was right about white supremacy. They
That's right.
thought that they're far superior than any black. I mean, the things that they did to blacks was horrifying. And if it wasn't for the Underground Railroad and the Northerners and all Republicans, every Republican was an abolitionist. I mean, the Democrats had a hit card with the pictures of all they were called radical Republicans on one side and their names on the back side because they were all white. So they needed to know who they were killing. They got to make sure they're not killing a fellow Democrat or a fellow racist slaveholder or something.
Right.
So they had to have a hit card. It literally was a hit card, and a lot of people don't know the story about Charles Sumner. Charles Sumner was one of the founders of the Republican Party. Strong abolitionist. I mean, just absolutely sold out. Do you ever hear about him from the Democrats? You ever hear about him from,
I've never heard about him,
blacks?
period.
Yeah, no. Charles Sumner, look him up. So he was given a speech on the floor of the Senate, a U.S. senator, about how horrible slavery was, how it was an abomination to the country. We needed to get rid of it. We needed to end it. And so the word got back to the House side. A U.S. congressman comes over. His name was Preston Brooks. He comes over to the Senate side and starts hitting Charles Sumner over the head with his cane, with a big
Hmm,
blob of metal on the end of it. Just starts crushing his skull with this thing. And guess what the Democrats in the Senate side did? They didn't pull him
nothing.
off. They didn't denounce him. They started cheering him. These are the Democrats. These are the wonderful, tolerant, we love everybody Democrats, and they're
But what
still
about
exactly the same today. They're the same people today,
but
exactly the same.
Nina, come on now. What don't they evolve? Don't they didn't the parties
They've
flip,
they've
right?
evolved into they've evolved into even more demonic people than they were before. I mean, they think that just by calling someone a racist, it really actually it sticks. Or a white supremacist, or this is one of their MOs that they do is they accuse you of doing what they do. They
So
always do that. You can tell
so
what they're
Nina,
doing by what they accuse you of doing.
what's interesting now, this show will go to podcast, so people aren't going to see that you are and I'm just saying a white blonde haired female and talking about racism and CRT, and they're gonna but you and the Democrat Party, but you are passionate about this and more informed about it than the average person because you do movies on it and
Right.
and you
That's why we
actually
do
do
movies.
and you actually do actual research. Why are you
Hmm.
doing this? I mean, you would think that because you are a white person that some people might say you've got that white privilege. Why are you worried about this? And you're doing movies on it. Can I ask you what your passion is to do movies and to get this information out there? Why is it your passion?
Well, it's to set the record straight. I'm tired of the revisionist history where they're turning it all on its head and they're saying that the good people are the bad people and the bad people are the good people. They've absolutely flipped it on its head because,
Mhm.
but sadly, the Republicans don't even know what their history is. You tell this to the RNC and they're going to look at you with a dumb look on their face, like, "What? I had no idea. Wow.
Right.
Move
Yeah.
on. Let's go see. Move on."
Yeah.
But that's what's so frustrating is that the Republican Party doesn't even understand their rich history, their heritage of being not just an abolitionist party. They were the civil rights party. They were the ones that were um, all for women's rights decades before women got the right to vote. They were for emancipation. They were for the ending of slavery. I mean, it was always what the Republican Party was and was it was about, and it never changed. It has not changed one bit. And that's
Isn't
why
it
the Democrats are always like, got to call them names, got to call them names. Don't listen to them. Oh, there's nothing happening behind that bush over there. So,
Isn't it frustrating that there's a lot of Republicans today that don't appreciate the fact that their party was the abolitionist party or the party for women's rights? There are a lot of elected officials today that don't appreciate the fact that the Republican Party is the free party of freedom and liberty, and they don't
exactly.
do enough to appreciate it and support it. Now,
That's right.
I got a couple other questions for you before we wrap up because
Sure.
we got a late start because we had technical difficulties. And I'm going to ask you one or two more questions. I have another interview at 6:30. Actually 7:30 your time. But anyhow, and I'm gonna have you on again soon because we had technical difficulties. But I want to make sure we get some other good information out because you got one other thing you talk about, which is Democrat racism. Have you think you've mentioned that already? Could you have that as another hot topic that you like to talk about? Is Democrat racism?
Well, that's all throughout our documentary, Emancipation, Revelation, Revolution, and that's about 90 minutes. The sequel, Reparations: Who Should Pay, really lays it out. It's like if you're going to be, paying people reparations, you better figure out were they actually a descendant from a slave holder or a slave? Were they a descendant from a slave holder? You've got 300,000 white Republican Northerners that gave their lives to reunite the party and to liberate the slaves, to liberate people they didn't even know. They laid down their life for that.
Mhm.
So should their families get some kind of reparations? It's a very complicated subject, and the only thing that you can do when you do have this discussion is bring forward the facts and the history and the evidence that proves that if there's going to be a
Right,
dime paid reparations, it's going to come from the Democratic Party because they were the ones that literally have kept slavery. I mean, they've kept racism alive in this country. And you're exactly right. It's a battle of freedom versus oppression, and they're still oppressing people. They're
that's
still
right.
calling them names. They're still, you if you're a black and you leave that liberal plantation, they will sick the hounds of derision on you and marginalize you and try and destroy your character. Look at what they do to people like Candace Owens and Ben
Right.
Carson and on and on. I mean, these are fabulously wonderful people, but because
And
they're black and they're
they
not
will use
Democrat, they'll destroy them.
and they will use narratives to control your freedoms. A lot of people talk about how, oh no, we still have freedom, but well, the narratives are being used to, you know, temper your own freedoms. They're not taking your freedoms, but they're giving you narratives that make you use your own freedoms differently and are
Mhm.
you're more subconscious about your
Yeah,
freedoms, and so you're more, how shall I say, you're more inclined to not use your freedoms and liberties that you're given.
yeah,
But
because you're
anybody that's sitting there
intimidated. People got to stop being intimidated by this kind of
exactly.
rhetoric. They have to just
And
speak
what's
up for themselves.
it's just very interesting, and we're gonna go more into this at another interview, hopefully sooner than later. I love the fact, like I said, you don't look at the type of person that would be diving into this kind of information, but because you do movies and you've done movies about this, you really have done a deep dive into it. So you have a unique twist that not only the twist to create a movie, not only the fact that you're Caucasian, but the fact that you're so passionate about showing the truth from a different perspective from behind the camera angle. And I find
Mhm.
that very interesting and think that everybody, I'm gonna go watch one of your movies before the next time we talk because
Oh, great.
it really is interesting. I want to get that unique experience, that unique perspective that you give from behind the camera.
Great. Oh, I
Not
think you'll be pleasantly surprised. It's pretty powerful.
well,
It's
nine. Are there any? Go ahead.
I was going to say I interviewed at least a little more than 40 conservative black leaders, and I must say that I probably cried at least a third of the interviews. They were so poignant and so packed with with poignance. I mean, it was just
Yeah.
I've never experienced anything like that before. It was very powerful, very powerful.
So Nino, well, they could get you more at www.renaissancewomenproductions, correct?
Yes, yes.
Are
Or
there
the
any
easy one
parting
at
word?
errvideo.com.
What
Pardon?
is it? What's the other one?
errvideo.com. Errvideo.com is a
Okay,
way to get straight into this, and then you could back out of it into Renaissance Women Productions. It's all connected.
I love it. Nina, any parting words before we end the broadcast?
God bless America. God bless you for what you're doing, and
Thank you very
have a
much.
wonderful, blessed Christmas and a very, very joyous and especially freedom laden New Year.
I love it. Well, Nina, I'm gonna wrap us up, and then I'll talk to you off camera for just a minute before we close up finally. But everybody else, thank you so much for watching the interview. Sorry we got a late start today, but we're gonna bring back Nina back on another interview, hopefully sooner than later. and you can catch more about her. We'll go do a deeper dive into some of the information that she has. Thank you so much. Please share the podcast, share the interview on Rumble. It'll be on Rumble in the next few days. Thank you all so much. Have a great day and a Merry Christmas.